I'll never forget the exact moment my life fractured into before and after. It was a Tuesday. Not a Thursday or a Saturday, a Tuesday, which somehow makes it worse. Tuesdays are supposed to be forgettable. I was working the evening shift at Rosario's, the kind of high-end Italian restaurant where the tablecloths cost more than my monthly rent, and the wine list reads like a thriller nobody asked for. I'd been waitressing there for 8 months, ever since I moved to the city with nothing but a duffel bag and the vague idea that I'd become someone important someday. Spoiler alert. I hadn't become anyone important. I was still that girl, the one who got table numbers confused, who laughed too loudly at customers' jokes, who forgot to upsell dessert. The restaurant was crowded that night. The kind of crowded that makes your feet ache by hour 2. Private dining room on the 2nd floor was booked for something exclusive. I'd overheard the manager mention it in hushed tones. VIPs only, he'd said. Which meant I definitely wasn't going up there. The people on the main floor were the usual mix. Lawyers celebrating deals, couples on anniversaries, businessmen who tipped well because they wanted to impress their dates. I was carrying a tray of martinis to table 7 when I first noticed him. He was sitting in the back corner booth, the one with the view of the street and the kitchen. He wore an expensive suit, the color of wet concrete, and even from across the room, I could feel the weight of his presence the way you feel humidity before a storm, heavy, inescapable, wrong in a way your body understands before your mind catches up. There were 4 men with him, all of them with the same kind of careful posture, the same alert stillness. They weren't laughing. They weren't even talking much. They were just present, observing. The man in the gray suit was the only one who seemed genuinely at ease, and something about that ease made my stomach tighten. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know anything about him, except that he made the air taste like copper and danger. Of course, I was an idiot about it. I walked closer than I should have, my eyes lingering a fraction too long when I set down a bread basket at the neighboring table. The man in gray was looking at his phone, his jaw sharp enough to cut glass, his dark eyes obscured by his gaze downward. But I felt him notice me. There was no other word for it. He noticed, and something inside me did a stupid, dangerous flip. I looked away, went back to work, told myself to stop being ridiculous. The thing is, I should have listened to that warning in my chest, that little voice that said stay away from that table. But I was young and stupid, and convinced that the worst thing that could happen to me was being ignored, not whatever was actually coming. It was around 9:15 p.m. when everything went wrong. I was at the bar, waiting for a drink order, when I heard the sound. Later, I would learn it was called gunfire. In that moment, it was just a crack, sharp and impossible, like the world had broken. The restaurant froze. That's the only way to describe it. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Every fork paused between plate and mouth. Everyone turned toward the sound, which had come from outside, muffled through the thick restaurant windows. Then there was another crack, and another. The man in gray was already moving. I didn't see him decide to move. He was just suddenly on his feet, his hand gesturing sharply to his men, and they were flowing toward him like water finding a channel. The other customers were confused, uncertain, still processing. Some were getting up, others were staying seated, hoping it was fireworks or a car backfiring. I knew it wasn't. I don't know why I did what I did next. I've thought about it 1,000 times since, and I still can't explain it. Some people might say I was brave. Some might say I was stupid. The truth is probably that I wasn't thinking at all. I was just moving. The gray-suited man was heading toward the restaurant entrance, and through the windows, I could see a dark car pulling up to the curb, could see a figure in the window, arm extended, and my brain made the leap. Gun. I'd seen enough movies to understand what that posture meant. Without deciding to, I was out from behind the bar. Without planning to, I was moving. My legs carried me in a direction my mind hadn't approved, and I was crossing the restaurant faster than I'd ever moved in my life. He didn't see me coming. That was the thing that struck me afterward. He was so certain of everything, so controlled, so sure of the world and his place in it, and he didn't see me. The shot cracked through the window just as I reached him. "Get down!" I screamed, and then I was moving again, pushing, my hands on his chest, so wide and solid I could barely span it, and throwing what little weight I had against him. We went down together, but not before the bullet found me. I didn't feel it at first. That's what nobody tells you. There's a moment of impact, a strange pressure, and then nothing. I was on top of him, my hands still braced against his shoulders, and his dark eyes were finally meeting mine wide with something I couldn't name. Some emotion I'd never seen on another human's face. "What the?" he started. But I was already pulling back. That's when the pain arrived. It started small, a burning sensation on my left side, just below my rib cage. Then it grew. It bloomed. It became the entire world. I looked down and saw red spreading across the white of my apron. The world tilted. His hands caught me before I hit the ground, hands that moved with absolute certainty, that knew exactly where to grab and how to hold. He was saying something, his voice distant and distorted, like I was underwater and he was on the shore. There were sirens starting up somewhere far away. The other restaurant patrons were screaming now, panicking, the spell broken. But I was focused on his face, the way his expression had shifted from controlled anger to something feral and dangerous. The way his dark eyes were hunting the room, already planning who would pay for this. The way he was looking at me with an intensity that had nothing to do with mercy and everything to do with obsession. "What's your name?" he asked, and his voice was quiet in a way that made the chaos around us seem unreal. I tried to speak. My mouth opened, closed. "Name," he demanded, not unkindly. His hand pressed against my wound, and I gasped at the pressure. "Tell me." "Isla," I whispered. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe. Or acceptance. "Well, Isla," he said softly, and his gaze burned into mine with the intensity of a dark star. "You've just become my most expensive problem." Then the paramedics were there, and he was letting me go. But not before I saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. Not before I understood that I'd just stepped across a threshold I couldn't cross back over. I'd just done something that would change everything. And the strangest part? As the pain consumed me, and the world went dark at the edges, I couldn't bring myself to regret it. Hospitals smell like surrender. That was my first coherent thought when I woke up, 3 days later, in a private room that was too nice to be covered by my insurance. The walls were the color of clouds. The machines beeped with unnecessary cheerfulness. And I was alive, which seemed like a cosmic joke of some kind. The bullet had missed everything important. That's what the doctor kept saying, as if I should feel grateful. It had entered through my left side, traveled through some muscle, and exited cleanly. Lucky, everyone kept saying. So lucky. As if luck had anything to do with the way I'd watched a man's face go blank with rage when he saw the blood. I was sleeping on pain medication when the nurse came in and said, very carefully, that I had a visitor. I should have been surprised. I should have had a moment of uncertainty about who it might be. But I wasn't surprised. Some part of me, the part that had stopped thinking rationally the moment I saw that gun, already knew. He filled the doorway the way powerful things fill spaces. The man in gray was different in daylight. Harder. His suit was charcoal now, and his tie was the color of wine, and he looked like the kind of person who could end wars with a single decision. His dark eyes scanned me quickly, assessing, cataloging, checking the measurements of damage. "You're awake," he said, not a question. Apparently, my voice was rough, disused. I'd been on pain medication, sleeping more than being conscious. "You're the guy." "The guy?" A faint smile touched his mouth. It didn't reach his eyes. "That's very vague. The guy I saved by acting like an idiot." He stepped closer, and I had to actively stop myself from flinching. There was something predatory about the way he moved, controlled, deliberate, the way a large cat moves across a room. He pulled the chair next to my bed closer and sat down, not as if asking permission, but as if it was already decided. "Your name is Isla." He said it like he was testing the sound of it in his mouth. "Isla." "What? Why do you need to know?" "Because," he said softly, "you took a bullet meant for me. That creates a debt. I need to know who I owe it to." I turned my head away, looking at the white wall instead of his face, because his face was dangerous. Looking at him made something in my chest tighten, and I was supposed to be recovering, and tightening chests seemed like a bad thing in a hospital. "Isla Chen," I said to the wall. "And you don't owe me anything." I was stupid. I acted without thinking. I should be suing you, if anything, for causing a disturbance at my place of work. You're not suing me. The way he said it wasn't threatening exactly. It was just a statement of fact, delivered with the certainty of someone who knew how the world worked and was simply informing me of its rules. How are you so sure? Because, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice now. You're not that kind of person. I turned my head to look at him. He was leaning back in the chair with the kind of ease that suggested he owned it. Owned the hospital. Owned the very air we were breathing. His dark eyes were fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin feel too small for my body. What kind of person am I then? I asked. The kind that acts before she thinks. The kind that cares about people she's never met. The kind that pushes a stranger out of the way of a bullet. He leaned forward slightly. The kind that will be very useful to me. I'm not, I started, but he raised a hand. You're going to listen to me, he said, and it wasn't a request. You took a bullet for me. You're in a hospital now because of me, which means you're a liability, which means I need to solve you. Solve me? Protect you. Make sure nobody thinks to use you against me. Make sure that you understand exactly how dangerous the world is, so you stop doing foolish things like jumping in front of guns. He stood up, and the room felt smaller without him sitting. You're going to stay in this hospital until you're healed. Then you're going to go somewhere safe. Somewhere I own. Somewhere nobody can touch you. And if I don't want to? His dark eyes went flat. That wasn't an option I presented. What if I have a choice? You do. He moved toward the door, and I was shocked to realize I didn't want him to leave. My hands gripped the blanket, trying to keep him there through sheer force of will. You can refuse. You can go back to your apartment and work your waitressing job and live your life. But I want to be very clear about something. He paused at the doorway and looked back at me. The people who tried to kill me today will try again, and they will see you as the key to my destruction. They will find you, they will use you, and they will not be gentle about it. His voice was quiet, which somehow made it worse. I can't protect you from that if you're not where I can reach you. So I'm a hostage. You're a guest, he corrected, albeit one with limited freedom of movement. He said it like there was a difference. What's your name? I asked suddenly. It felt important, suddenly, to know the name of the man I'd literally thrown myself in front of a bullet for. To know the name of the man who was now planning to fold me into his life like I was a piece of a much larger puzzle. He considered the question for a moment. Then, Dante Moretti. And before you ask, yes, that Moretti family. Yes, the one you should definitely be afraid of. Yes, the one that makes the news every few months for some tragedy nobody can prove we caused. Why are you telling me this? Because, Dante said, and his dark eyes were hungry now, fixed on me with an intensity that made the monitors beep faster. I have a feeling you're going to find out anyway, and I'd rather you hear it from me. Then he was gone, and I was left in the quiet hospital room, my heart racing, my side aching, and a terrible certainty settling into my bones. I'd just made a deal with the devil. And the worst part of me was relieved. The house was beautiful in a way that made you feel poor just looking at it. It was situated on the coast, all glass and clean lines. The kind of modern architecture that belonged in magazines but not in real life. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the ocean, and even though it was early evening, the water was dark and restless, matching my mood perfectly. I'd been there for 4 days. 4 days of doctors coming to check on my wound, of physical therapists showing me exercises, of nurses bringing food I couldn't eat because my stomach was too twisted with anxiety. 4 days of not seeing Dante Moretti at all. He'd arranged everything with the kind of efficiency that suggested logistics were simply another thing he controlled. An ambulance from the hospital, transferred while I was half asleep. A car ride where I'd sat next to a woman named Lucia, who had kind eyes and cold hands and didn't ask me any questions. A bedroom, because yes, plural bedrooms, that was larger than my entire apartment had been. Now I was standing in the living room, trying not to think about how much this space probably cost. When he walked in from what I assumed was his office, Dante Moretti in daylight was somehow worse than Dante Moretti in the hospital room. He was wearing a white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and I could see the edge of a tattoo on his left forearm, something in Latin that I couldn't quite read. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it, and he looked tired in a way that suggested he wasn't sleeping much. He looked like a man carrying weight. "You're up and moving around," he said. It sounded like an observation, but there was something underneath it, approval maybe. Or relief. "How's the pain?" "Manageable." It wasn't entirely true. I still hurt, and the movement made things ache, but I'd already learned that Dante didn't want excuses. He wanted facts. "Where have you been?" "Working." He moved toward the kitchen, and I found myself following, drawn like a satellite into his orbit. There are complications. People who needed to be reminded that attempting to kill me inside my own city has consequences. The way he said it was conversational, like he was talking about a business meeting, not whatever violence had probably occurred. "People are dead?" I asked quietly. He glanced at me over his shoulder. "Several." "Does that bother you?" I thought about lying. Instead, "I don't know." Something flickered across his face, a moment of something that might have been respect. Honesty. Good. It means you're not completely naive. He poured water from a glass pitcher and handed it to me. Our fingers didn't touch, but they came close, and I felt the distance between us like a physical thing. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the counter stools. I sat. "I want to explain something to you, not because you deserve an explanation, but because it will make you safer to understand." I waited. "The Moretti family has operated in this city for 60 years, he continued, his voice taking on the quality of someone delivering facts he'd recited before but never tired of. "We're not the largest organization. We're not the most violent. But we are the most strategically positioned. We have police. We have judges. We have politicians. We have bankers who are careful about where money goes." He was explaining himself. "Why? 3 days ago, someone decided to kill me during dinner. This was stupid for 3 reasons. He held up a finger. "First, I have security. Second, they failed. Third, killing me causes problems for people who value stability more than profit. So now those people are putting pressure on whoever ordered the hit. And," I prompted when he paused. "And," Dante continued, "whoever ordered the hit is now dead, along with his 2 lieutenants and his accountant. His organization is fractured. His territory is being redistributed. And nobody will be stupid enough to try again for at least 6 months." He said it like he was explaining a math problem. "Because of me?" I asked. "Because of what you did," he corrected. "You didn't just save my life. You exposed a weakness. My rivals didn't know who you were. They were trying to understand the connection, the relationship, and in trying to exploit it, they made mistakes." I set the water down because my hands were shaking. "So I'm a pawn in your game?" "No." His voice sharpened. "You're a complication. But you're my complication." There was something possessive in the way he said it, and it should have frightened me. It probably did frighten me, but underneath the fear was something else, something that felt almost like safety. "How long do I have to stay here?" "As long as necessary." "That's not an answer." "No," he agreed. "It's not. But it's the only one I have." He stood up and moved to the window, looking out at the dark ocean. In the reflection of the glass, I could see his profile, the sharp line of his jaw, the intensity of his gaze, the weight of whatever he was carrying. "There's a tattoo," I said, the words escaping before I could stop them. "On your arm. What does it say?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then he pushed his sleeve up further, exposing the full tattoo. It was Latin, in sharp black letters. "Veritas lux mea." "Truth is my light," he translated, not turning around. "My mother had it done when I was 18. She said power without truth is just violence. I've spent my entire adult life proving her right." "Your mother sounds smart." "She was." His voice changed slightly. Something in it became almost vulnerable. "She's dead now. Cancer. 10 years ago." I didn't know what to say to that. I wasn't good at grief conversations. I'd never had anyone close to me die before. So instead, I said, "I'm sorry." He finally turned to face me. "I don't want your sympathy. I want you to understand something. You jumped in front of a bullet for someone you'd never met. Most people in my world don't make that choice. Most people protect themselves. That kind of instinct, that's what my mother would have called truth. And that's why I'm not going to let anything happen to you." "Is that a promise?" I asked. It's a fact. He walked past me toward the hallway, and I felt the loss of his presence like a physical thing. Dante, I called out, and he paused. Why are you telling me all this? Why explain anything? He looked back, and in the shadowed hallway, I couldn't quite read his expression. Because, he said, I'm going to need you to understand who I am before I do the things I'm going to do to keep you safe. And I want you to make that choice with full information. What choice? Whether to stay. Then he was gone, and I was left with the dark ocean and the certainty that I was standing at the edge of something I couldn't come back from. The walls started closing in around day 9. It wasn't sudden. It was gradual. The way drowning probably happens, you're fine, and then you're not. And you can't quite pinpoint the exact moment everything changed. Dante had stopped explaining things. He'd stopped leaving me notes. He'd stopped being present in the house at all, and somehow his absence was worse than his presence had been. Instead, there were people. Lucia was always there, my assigned keeper, kind but immovable. There was a security team that changed shifts every 12 hours, men with earpieces and blank expressions who monitored the doors and windows. There was a doctor who came twice a day to check on my wound. There was a nutritionist who left meal plans. There was a stylist who showed up with clothes and quietly informed me that I would need an entirely new wardrobe if I was going to be living here. Living here. As if I had a choice about it anymore. When can I go outside? I asked Lucia on day 11, as she was bringing me lunch I wouldn't eat. The courtyard, she said, not unkindly. Never beyond the walls. And my apartment? My job? Already handled. The restaurant owner has been informed you won't be returning. Your apartment lease has been broken and the contents moved to storage. You just what? Mr. Moretti didn't want loose ends. Loose ends. That's what I was, apparently. A loose end that needed to be tied up, filed away, controlled. I'd made it 8 days before I had my first panic attack. It happened at night, in the dark of my room, and it felt like the walls were actually closing in, compressing the air, making it impossible to breathe. My heart was racing, my hands were shaking, and I couldn't remember why I'd thought this was a good idea. I'd jumped in front of a bullet, and now I was a prisoner in a beautiful house by the ocean. The security guy outside my door must have heard something, because he came in without knocking. I was expecting one of the blank-faced men, but it was Dante instead, and he looked furious. What's wrong? He demanded, crossing the room in 4 steps and sitting on the edge of my bed. Are you hurt? Is the wound? I can't breathe, I gasped out, which was dramatic and embarrassing and completely true. He didn't seem to find it embarrassing. He just took my hand and pressed it against his chest, right over his heart, and let me feel it beating steady and strong and real. Match my breathing, he said. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Come on. So I did. I pressed my hand against his chest and matched my breathing to his. And slowly the panic retreated. My heart rate came down. The walls stopped closing in, and I became very aware that Dante was in my bed. In my room, in the space I'd been alone in, and his presence was somehow both terrifying and comforting. Better? He asked, when I'd had a few normal breaths. How did you know to do that? I have nightmares sometimes, he said simply. Lucia taught me the breathing trick when I was 16. It works. He was still there. One hand on my chest, the other still holding mine. I could feel his heartbeat under my palm, strong and steady and alive. I can't do this, I whispered. I can't be a prisoner. I couldn't finish the sentence because there were too many things I couldn't do. You're not a prisoner. I can't leave. I can't work. I can't see anyone. I can't. You can, he said, and something in his voice was fierce. You can do all of those things, but not now, not yet. There are still people looking for leverage. There are still enemies who would use you. So I just stay here? Forever? No. He shifted closer, and I should have been afraid of the movement, but I wasn't. But I need you to understand something. You're not captive here because I'm cruel. You're protected here because I'm paranoid. There's a difference. Is there? He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something in his face that I hadn't seen before: vulnerability. Do you want to leave? Do you want me to arrange it? I can. I have the resources. You could be gone by morning, somewhere no one would find you. The question hung between us, and I understood it was genuine. He was offering me an exit. If I left, I said slowly, where would I go? Somewhere safe, somewhere far. I have resources everywhere. And you'd protect me from there? I'd try. But it would be harder. I'd be managing it from a distance. I should have said yes. I should have grabbed at the escape he was offering. Instead, I said, I don't want to go. Why? He sounded genuinely curious, like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve. I didn't have an answer. I just knew that the idea of leaving felt worse than the idea of staying. That the isolation in his house was somehow less lonely than being alone somewhere else would be. Because I took a bullet for you, I said finally. And that means something. It has to mean something. Something shifted in his face. His hand on my chest moved up slightly, fingers brushing my collarbone. It means something. What? It means, he said quietly, that you're mine to protect. It means that anyone who tries to hurt you will answer to me. It means that you belong here. And even though I should have been terrified by the possessiveness in his voice, I wasn't. I was relieved. Because belonging somewhere, even in captivity, was better than being nowhere at all. He left after that. But the touch of his hand lingered on my skin long into the night. The week after the panic attack, Dante started spending more time in the house. Not with me. Exactly. He would be in his office conducting business, or on the phone speaking low and fast in Italian, or reviewing documents that made his expression go blank and dangerous. But he was there, and somehow that made everything feel different. I started learning his patterns. He took his coffee black, early in the morning, before he did anything else. He made phone calls between 3 and 4 p.m., like clockwork. He kept a bottle of whiskey in his office that he didn't drink from. He had a habit of running his hand through his hair when he was thinking about something difficult, and he watched me. I'd catch him sometimes, when I was reading in the library or looking out the window at the ocean. His dark eyes would follow me with an intensity that made my skin feel too tight. He never said anything about it. He'd just look for a moment, and then return to whatever he was doing, like I was a problem he was solving in the back of his mind. It was on day 15 that he invited me to dinner in his office. The wound, Lucia had said that morning, gently examining the place where the bullet had entered my body. It's healing well. You should feel much better now. Much stronger. Much stronger. Like that mattered. When Dante found me in the library that afternoon, he was carrying fresh clothes over his arm. Dinner, 7 p.m., in my office. Is this a command or an invitation? I asked. Would you come if it was an invitation? I don't know. Then it's a command, he said matter-of-factly. But I'd prefer if you wanted to come. He left the clothes on the chair and walked out, and I was left holding a dress that was the color of wine and probably cost more than I used to make in a month. I changed my mind 17 times before 7 p.m., went through a cycle of, I won't go, I'll go, I won't go. By 6:55, I was standing in front of his office door, dressed in the wine-colored dress, my hair down, and my heart doing something complicated in my chest. Dante was at his desk when I entered, but he stood immediately. He was wearing a dark suit, and he looked less tired than he had in days. His office was all dark wood and leather and books, the kind of space that smelled like power and old money. You came, he said, like he genuinely hadn't expected me to. You commanded me to. No, I said it was a command, but we both know it wasn't. You could have refused. He moved around the desk and gestured to the small table by the window, where food was already laid out. You chose to come. We ate in near silence, and it should have been awkward, but it wasn't. It was something else charged, maybe, careful. Like we were both aware that we were balancing on the edge of something, and one wrong move would send us falling. Tell me something true, he said, halfway through the meal. Tell me something nobody knows about you. Why? Because I want to understand you, and I'm not good at understanding things without information. I thought about it, really thought about it. Then, I used to want to be a dancer. When I was a kid, I would watch videos online and teach myself choreography in my apartment, but I wasn't good enough, and I didn't have the money for classes, so I gave up. And I'm mostly okay with that, but sometimes I still have dreams where I'm dancing, and I wake up angry that I'm not. Dante was quiet, considering. Why did you tell me that? You asked for something true. Yes. But you could have told me something small, something that didn't matter. This doesn't matter either, I said. It matters, he corrected. It matters because it's something you hide, and things that are hidden are always the most important things. After dinner, he didn't ask me to leave, so I didn't. We moved to the leather chairs by the window and watched the sun set over the ocean, painting everything gold and crimson. I killed a man when I was 22, he said suddenly. My father's accountant. My father ordered it because the accountant was skimming money. I did it without hesitation. Didn't even question it. Why are you telling me this? Because you told me something true. Now I'm doing the same. He wasn't looking at me. He was watching the water. But I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hand gripped the arm of the chair. Do you regret it? I asked. No, but I think about his family. His wife doesn't know what he was doing. She just knows he's gone, and she hates me for it. That's the cost of this life. You save yourself, you destroy someone else. Is that supposed to make me understand something? It's supposed to make you understand that I'm not a good man, Dante said, finally looking at me. That being with me, staying here, choosing me, those are all decisions that come with costs. I want you to see that. I want you to choose anyway. Choose what? I whispered. To stay, not because you're trapped, but because you want to. The space between us felt heavy with possibility. I could leave. He'd given me an exit. I could choose the risk of the outside world over the certainty of him. But when he looked at me like that, with those dark eyes burning with something that felt a lot like hunger, I couldn't imagine choosing anything else. I want to stay, I said. And when he leaned over and cupped my face in his hand, it felt less like a beginning and more like a continuation of something that had been inevitable since the moment I pushed him out of the way of a bullet. I didn't sleep in my own bed that night. Instead, I woke up in Dante's room, on silk sheets, with his arm around my waist and the early light of dawn coming through the windows. We hadn't. Nothing had happened beyond the kiss. But lying in his bed, with his heartbeat under my cheek and his breathing steady against my hair, felt like everything and nothing at the same time. He was already awake when I opened my eyes. His dark eyes were watching me like he'd been waiting for me to surface. Morning, he said, and his voice was rough with sleep. Hi. I didn't know what else to say. Didn't know the protocol for waking up next to someone who was supposed to be dangerous and untouchable. Did we? No, he said, and something flickered across his face. Regret, maybe, or restraint. I want to, and I will, but not yet. Why not? Because the first time I touch you like that, he said, it needs to be when you're sure. When there's no doubt in your mind that this is what you want. I want it now, I said, and immediately felt my face flush because I'd never been so direct about desire before. It felt dangerous, like I was admitting something I couldn't take back. He smiled slightly. I know you do. But want and certainty aren't the same thing. Give me a little longer. The next 3 days were strange. Dante started including me in his routine. I would sit in his office while he worked, not speaking, just being there. He would take my hand sometimes, when we were walking through the house. He would touch my back, guiding me through doorways, but he never pushed further. It was torture in the most exquisite way. On the evening of day 18, his phone rang. I watched his expression change as he listened. Watched the careful control crack for just a moment before he rebuilt it. Yes, I'll handle it, he said, and hung up. What happened? My father's been arrested, he said flatly. They found evidence linking him to at least 3 murders. He's going to prison for the rest of his life. I didn't know what to say to that. I'm sorry. That must be. Don't, he said sharply. Don't apologize. He deserves it. He's been destroying people for 40 years. Dante stood up and paced to the window. This means things change. People are going to be nervous. Alliances are going to shift. There's going to be violence. What kind of violence? The kind where people die, he said without inflection. The kind where I have to be more careful about your safety than I already am. Will you leave? The question escaped before I could stop it. He turned to look at me. What? Will you leave me here and go? To handle things? Yes. His expression was unreadable. For probably a week, maybe longer. Don't, I said. I don't have a choice. You do, I said, and I was standing now, moving toward him because this mattered. You could trust someone else to handle it. You could stay. Isla, he said my name, like it was a warning. You don't know what you're asking me to do. I'm asking you to choose me over your business. I can't. If I do that, everything falls apart. People will see weakness, and they'll exploit it. They'll come after both of us. He reached out and touched my face, his thumb sliding across my cheekbone. Don't ask me to choose. Not yet. Not when you're still so vulnerable. When? I asked. When will you be able to choose? When you're stronger. When you understand what this is. When you've made the choice to be with me knowing exactly what that costs. He kissed me then. And it was different from the first kiss, deeper, more urgent. Like he was trying to tell me something he couldn't say in words. His hands moved to my waist, pulling me closer, and I could feel the control in every touch, the way he was holding himself back. I wish I could stay, he said against my mouth. I wish I could just be the person you want me to be. You are, I said. You're exactly who I want you to be. No, I'm not. You want to see the best version of me. But the best version of me is still a man who kills people for money. A man who controls a criminal organization. A man who took you out of your life and put you in a cage. It doesn't feel like a cage when you're here. He pulled back and looked at me. Really looked at me, like he was memorizing something. When I come back, he said, things are going to be different. People are going to know about you. They're going to know that you matter to me. And that means you're in danger in a way you haven't been before. I know, I said. Do you? He gripped my face between both his hands, tilting my head up. Do you really understand that loving me is the most dangerous thing you could possibly do? I didn't answer. I kissed him instead, poured everything I didn't know how to say into it, the fear, the attachment, the strange, fierce feeling that had been growing in my chest since I'd taken that bullet. When he pulled away, his eyes were almost black with emotion. Stay close to Lucia while I'm gone, he said. Don't do anything without asking. Don't trust anyone. And if anyone tries to take you, you'll kill them, I finished. I'll destroy them, he corrected. There's a difference. Then he was packing a bag, and Lucia was driving him to the airport, and I was left alone in the house with the realization that I was in love with him, that I'd fallen completely and possibly fatally in love with a man who was everything I should be running from. And I was going to wait for him, patiently or impatiently, but I was going to wait. He came back on day 25 covered in violence. Not literal violence, there was no visible injury, but I could see it on him anyway, in the tightness around his eyes and the way he held his body like it hurt. He walked into the house at 2 a.m. and found me waiting in the living room despite the hour, and he looked at me like I was the first real thing he'd seen in days. You should be sleeping, he said. I was worried. He crossed the room in long strides and pulled me against him, and I could feel the exhaustion in him, the weight of whatever he'd had to do. He buried his face in my hair and just held me like I was the only thing keeping him tethered to something human. 2 people died, he said against my hair. They were trying to take advantage of the situation with my father. I had to make sure they understood that was a mistake. I didn't respond with shock or horror. I just held him and let him breathe. You're not afraid of me, he said. And it was a statement, not a question. I am, I said. But not in the way you mean. He pulled back and looked at me. What way then? I'm afraid of how much I need you, I said. That terrifies me more than anything else. He kissed me slowly, and it felt like forgiveness for everything he'd done while he was gone. We moved through the house like that. Him touching me following, until we were in his bedroom and the rest of the world had stopped existing. Tell me if you want to stop, he said, and his voice was rough. Tell me if anything is wrong. I want this, I whispered. Say it clearly. I want you. I want this. I want to be with you. He undressed me with the same careful control he applied to everything, like I was something precious that might break. The wound on my side had healed to a thin line, and he traced it with his finger like it was holy. You saved my life, he said, and then his mouth was there, kissing the scar. I gasped at the sensation. At the weight of what he was doing, he was acknowledging it, marking it as important, as sacred. "Come here," he said, and pulled me up to meet him. When he entered me, it was slow and deliberate, and I made a small sound at the sensation that was partly pain and partly something else entirely. He stopped immediately. "Stay with me," he said. "Just breathe. It gets better." It did. The discomfort faded and something else took its place, a feeling of completeness, of everything that had been missing suddenly clicking into place. I wrapped my arms around him and held on, and he moved slowly, carefully, like he was trying to tell me something with his body that his words couldn't express. "Look at me," he commanded softly, and I opened my eyes. His dark gaze bore into mine with an intensity that was almost unbearable. "You're mine. Do you understand?" I nodded, not able to find words. "Say it." "I'm yours," I whispered. He moved deeper, and something inside me cracked open. It wasn't physical, it was emotional, spiritual. Something I didn't have a name for. It was like he was rewriting something fundamental about me. "You're mine," he repeated, "and I will destroy anyone who tries to take you." I didn't say no. I didn't say that wasn't romantic or healthy or normal. I just felt it settle over me like a vow. Because he wasn't asking me to agree with him, he was telling me a fact. And the fact was that I belonged to him, and he belonged to me, and there was nothing else that mattered. Later, after we'd finished, and he was holding me close in the darkness, his heartbeat steady under my cheek, he said, "I meant what I said, about destroying anyone who tries to hurt you. That's not something I'm saying romantically. It's something I'm telling you practically." "I know," I said. "And that doesn't frighten you?" "It should," I said. "But it doesn't. It just makes me feel safe." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "My mother would have liked you. She believed in love like this, fierce and true. She used to tell me that normal love wasn't enough for our family, that we needed love that could survive violence." "I love you," I said, and it was the easiest thing I'd ever said. It was also the most terrifying. "I know," he said. "I've known since you jumped in front of a bullet for a stranger." "You don't have to say it back," I said quickly. "I know this is complicated, and I know you're probably not." "I love you," he said. "I've loved you since I saw you in the hospital and understood that you'd jumped in front of a bullet for me. That kind of love isn't something you choose. It's something that happens to you." He held me tighter, and I fell asleep to the sound of his heartbeat and the certainty that I'd made the right choice, even if it was the most dangerous choice I'd ever made. The attack came on day 31. We were in the living room, me curled against his side on the couch while he reviewed contracts on his laptop. It was a normal Tuesday, or as normal as things could be in our life, and I was reading a book and thinking about nothing in particular when I heard the first explosion. It was distant, somewhere beyond the walls of the property, but it was unmistakable. The windows rattled. Dante was on his feet immediately, pulling me up and moving toward the center of the house. "Stay with me," he commanded, his phone already at his ear. "Get the perimeter secured. I want a full report in 5 minutes." Lucia appeared seemingly from nowhere, pulling me into a side hallway. I could hear Dante on the phone, his voice becoming something else colder, more dangerous, less human. "They breached the gate," Lucia said, not unkindly. "We need to get you to the safe room." "What about Dante?" "Mr. Moretti can handle himself." There was another explosion, closer this time, and I gasped. Lucia pulled harder, drawing me down a corridor, and then down a set of stairs I hadn't known existed. The safe room was hidden behind a bookcase, and it was soundproofed, which was somehow worse because I couldn't hear what was happening above us. "How long does this usually last?" I asked, my voice small. "Depends on how stupid they are," Lucia said. "If they're smart, they'll realize this was a mistake and retreat. If they're not smart, Mr. Moretti will kill all of them." I didn't ask her to explain which outcome was more likely. We were in the safe room for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. Lucia had a phone that kept receiving updates, and I could see her expression shift as messages came in. From what I could gather, Dante's security team had contained the attack. There were casualties. All of them were not Dante's people. The door opened and Dante appeared, and my breath caught. There was blood on his white shirt. His dark hair was messed up. There was a cut along his jaw that was still bleeding, and his eyes were black with a kind of rage that looked almost primal. "It's contained," he said to Lucia, and then he looked at me. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head. "Then come with me." He didn't wait for me to move. He just took my hand and pulled me out of the safe room and up the stairs. His grip was tight enough to hurt, but I didn't pull away. We moved through the house and ended up in his office, where he locked the door behind us. "Let me see," he said, running his hands over me like he was checking for injuries. "I'm fine. What happened? Who was it?" "Nikolai Sokolov," Dante said, his jaw clenching. "A Russian distributor who thought my father's arrest was an opportunity to expand his territory into our city." "Is he?" "Dead," Dante confirmed, along with 8 of his men. He moved to the window and looked out at the property. I could see the damage now, scorch marks on the gates, the remnants of the explosion, his security team moving around with weapons. "This is because of you," I said suddenly. He turned to look at me. "What?" "They attacked because of me, because I matter to you, because they wanted to hurt you by taking me." "Yes," he said, not bothering to deny it. "And I killed them for it. This is how it works, Isla. This is the cost. I didn't want anyone to die for me." "That's not how this works," Dante said. "People die around power. People die around me. You made the choice to be here. You made the choice to matter to me. And now people will die because of that choice." He was still covered in blood and rage. And instead of frightening me, it made me realize something. He'd been right, this was what he was. This was the reality underneath the careful touches and the quiet moments. He was someone who could kill without hesitation when it came to protecting what he cared about. And I loved him anyway. "I don't regret it," I said. "You should." "I don't," I repeated. "I know that sounds crazy. I know I should be horrified. But Dante, I don't regret any of this. Not the bullet, not coming here, not loving you. Even if it means people die, even if it means I'm in danger, I don't regret it." He looked at me for a long moment, and something inside his expression softened. He reached out and pulled me against him, and I didn't care that he was covered in blood. I just held him and felt his heartbeat slow down as he breathed. "You're remarkable," he said against my hair. "Do you know that? I'm reckless." "You're remarkable," he insisted. "Most people would have run by now. Most people would be terrified of me." "I am terrified of you," I said. "But I'm more terrified of being without you." He pulled back and kissed me, and it tasted like blood and salt and something darker. When he pulled away, there was a mark on my mouth where the cut on his jaw had transferred blood. "We need to clean you up," I said. "I know." But he didn't move. He just held me and looked at me like I was the most precious thing he'd ever possessed. And we stayed like that until the adrenaline faded and the reality of what had happened settled over us like ash. The aftermath of the attack lasted longer than the attack itself. There were meetings, so many meetings. Dante spent hours on the phone with people whose names I didn't learn, making arrangements that I didn't fully understand. Lucia mentioned something about territory adjustments and new alliances. The security team was doubled. The house felt less like a home and more like a fortress. And through it all, Dante kept checking on me like I was the one who'd been wounded. "I'm fine," I told him on day 33, when he came to find me in the library at midnight because I couldn't sleep. "You're not sleeping. Neither are you." He sat down on the couch next to me. He looked exhausted in a way that sleep might not fix. "I'm trying to figure out if I can do this." "Do what?" "Keep you safe," he said. "Keep doing what I do while also protecting you. I don't know if it's possible." "It's not," I said. He looked at me sharply. "It's not possible," I continued, "because I'm not helpless. I'm not a fragile thing you have to protect. I took a bullet, Dante. I made a choice. I'm making choices every single day to be here. That doesn't mean—" "It means everything," I interrupted. "It means I'm not a victim. It means I'm complicit. It means I've chosen this life, knowing what it costs." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "My father is in prison for life. That's what's next for me, probably. This kind of life, it ends in prison or death. And I'm sitting here letting you tie your fate to mine, knowing that." "I know that too," I said. "I've known it since you told me about the accountant, and I'm choosing it anyway." "Why?" He sounded genuinely mystified. "Because," I said, I took a bullet for a stranger. That means something about who I am. And who I am is someone who loves fiercely, someone who doesn't calculate risk, someone who just chooses. And I choose you. Every single day, I choose you. He pulled me against him, and we sat like that in the darkness of the library, and it felt like a ceremony of some kind, a confirmation of something that had been decided long ago. Over the next week, I started asking him about his business. Small questions at first, then larger ones. He seemed surprised by my interest, but he answered. He explained the distribution networks and the political connections. He told me about which judges were in his pocket and which cops he paid. He explained the violence in the same clinical way someone might explain mathematics. And I listened. On day 37, he took me outside of the house for the first time. We went to a restaurant not Rosario's, somewhere else, newer, more exclusive. Dante kept his hand on the small of my back as we walked in, and people noticed. I could see the calculations happening in people's eyes. The woman with Dante Moretti was someone important. The woman with Dante Moretti was someone to be careful around. "We're establishing you," he told me quietly, as we sat at a private table. "People need to know that you're mine. They need to see it. Is this what you meant? About making the choice to be with you knowing what it costs? This is part of it," he said. "Being with me means being seen. It means people knowing they can't touch you without dealing with me." After dinner, we went to his office downtown, a place I'd never been. It was on the top floor of a building that he owned, and the view of the city at night was breathtaking. People came and went, treating him with a mixture of respect and fear. One man came in to report casualties from the previous week. Dante listened, and then dismissed him. No emotion on his face. Another woman came with financial reports. Dante asked questions, made decisions about money and amounts that would have been incomprehensible to my younger self, the waitress self, the one who'd worked for minimum wage and tips. And through it all, he kept me at his side, kept his hand on me, kept showing the world that I was his. "Are you sure?" he asked me later, in the car on the way home. "Are you sure you want this? Once you're fully seen as part of my organization, there's no taking it back. People will come after you. People will use you. They would do that anyway," I said. "At least this way, I'm protected." "Protected isn't the right word. You're claimed." "I know," I said, and I was smiling because it was true. I was claimed. I belonged to him, and he belonged to me. And there was something deeply right about that, despite how wrong it should have been. When we got home, he took me to the bedroom, and it was different this time. He made love to me with a kind of possessiveness that should have felt suffocating, but instead felt like coming home. "I love you," he said, and it wasn't the first time. But it felt different. It felt like a vow. "I love you too," I said, and I meant it with everything I had. Later, as he slept, I lay awake and thought about the person I'd been before the bullet. That girl felt very far away. I'd been transformed by violence and love in equal measure. I'd been reforged, and I didn't want to go back. 6 months later, I was sitting in Dante's office when news came that changed everything again. "Your father made a deal," his lawyer said, spreading documents across the desk. "He's willing to testify against 3 other families in exchange for a reduced sentence, but he'll implicate you in the process." Dante's expression didn't change. "When?" 2 weeks. Maybe less if the prosecution moves fast. I felt Dante's hand find mine under the desk. His grip was steady, unchanged by what he'd just learned. After the lawyer left, we sat in silence for a while. "This is it then," Dante said finally. "This is the moment where it ends." "Prison?" I asked quietly. "Probably. Once he testifies, the FBI will move fast. They've been building a case for years." "How long?" I asked, not sure I wanted to know the answer. 10 years, maybe more. Depends on the deal he makes. Depends on what the evidence shows." I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. I'd known this was coming, he'd told me it was coming, but knowing something intellectually and feeling it were different things. "We could run," I said. "No, we couldn't. We could. You have resources. We could disappear. We could." "Stop," he said, and his voice was gentle but firm. "That's not who I am. I don't run. I face consequences. Even if the consequence is 10 years in prison? Even then. He turned to face me fully. I knew this was coming. I've known for a long time, and I'm at peace with it. I'm not, I said, and my voice cracked. He pulled me against him, and I buried my face in his chest. I could feel his heartbeat steady and calm, while mine was panicking. Listen to me, he said, and his voice was a command. While I'm inside, I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to live, he said. I need you to not waste away waiting for me. I need you to understand that this is the cost, and you get to make a new choice about whether you want to pay it. I want to pay it. You might not, after 2 years in, after 5 years, after 8 years. Then I'll want to pay it then too, I said. Isla, Dante, you asked me to make this choice knowing what it would cost. I made it. I made it every single day for 6 months, and I'm making it now. If you go to prison, I'll wait. If you never get out, I'll still wait. That's not something I'm going to change my mind about. He was quiet for a long time. Then, I've set up arrangements. Money, properties. You'll never want for anything. And I have people I trust, more than most, who will protect you while I'm inside. I don't need protection. You do. Because my enemies will absolutely try to use you against me. He pulled back and looked at me. This is the part that matters, Isla. This is the part where you understand that loving me means surviving in a world where I'm gone. That's the real cost. Not the danger, not the violence, the absence. I'll survive, I said. I survived before you. I can survive without you for 10 years. But you don't want to. No, I admitted. I don't want to, but I will. The FBI came exactly 14 days later. They showed up at the house with warrants and weapons, and the certainty of people who'd been waiting for this moment for years. Dante didn't resist. He just took my hand, held it for a moment, and then let it go. Take care of yourself, he said. You too, I whispered. I watched from the window as they put him in a car. He looked back once, and our eyes met, and it felt like a goodbye that wasn't really a goodbye, more like a postponement. The first weeks were the hardest. I moved through the house like a ghost, unable to adjust to his absence. Lucia tried to help, but there was nothing she could do. The problem wasn't practical. Money wasn't an issue. Safety wasn't an issue. The problem was that I'd gotten used to his presence, and without it, I felt fundamentally incomplete. I visited him in prison once a week, without fail. We would sit across from each other in the visiting room, and he would tell me about his day and ask me about mine. It was surreal and painful, and somehow beautiful. I love you, I told him during one visit, because saying it became important, making sure he knew. I know, he said. That's what keeps me alive in here, knowing that you're out there, waiting. I'm not just waiting, I said. I'm living, like you told me to. Good, he said. That's exactly what I needed to hear. 6 months in, I took over some of his business interests. Not the violent parts. Lucia and his lieutenant, a man named Marcus, handled those, but the legitimate businesses, the ones that could use a woman's touch. Dante's restaurant started getting reviews in prominent magazines. His real estate ventures expanded. I built something with the resources he'd left me, and it felt important. A year in, one of his enemies tried to approach me, thinking I might be weak without him. I had him arrested within hours. Dante's people took care of it, and it was done quietly, without bloodshed. But the message was clear. I wasn't a widow waiting quietly. I was Dante Moretti's woman, and that meant something. 2 years in, Dante's lawyer came to me with an offer. He can testify about the families he's been protecting, the lawyer said. Testify against specific individuals. It would cut his sentence substantially, maybe get him out in 5 years instead of 10. I brought the offer to him during visiting hours. He was quiet for a long time. That would mean making enemies of people who are currently keeping people I care about safe. I know, I said. I wouldn't ask you to do it, but you're telling me it's an option. I'm telling you that there's a path where I see you in 5 years instead of 10. And I'm telling you that I'd rather have 5 years with you than 10 years waiting, even if it means being in danger. He looked at me with something like awe. You love me. I've always loved you, I said. That was never the question. He testified. He made enemies. And in 5 years, he came home. When he walked into the house for the first time as a free man, he looked different. He was thinner, grayer at the temples, harder in ways that weren't just physical. But when he looked at me, his dark eyes burned with the same intensity they always had. "You're still here," he said, like he couldn't quite believe it. "Where else would I be?" He pulled me against him, and we stood like that in the entrance of the house where everything had started, and it felt like we were closing one circle only to open another. Because the danger wasn't gone. His enemies knew where to find him now. There would be more violence, more threats, more tests, but we'd survived the hardest thing, the separation, the uncertainty, the long dark nights of wondering if we'd made the right choice. And we had, standing in his arms, with the ocean visible through the windows and the dark sky pressing down above us. I understood that this was what love looked like in our world. Not perfect, not safe, not without shadows, but real and true and worth every single consequence. "I love you," I said. "I know," he replied. "That's the only thing that kept me alive." And in the darkness of the house, with the future uncertain and our enemies still circling, we found peace in the fact that we'd chosen each other, knowing exactly what that choice would cost, and we'd choose it again.